Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today, and I'm showing you a firearm that's a little bit different than what we've seen. It looks a lot like a Smith and Wesson K-frame. It's got some nice features on it, like a pinned barrel, a nice hammer-mounted firing pin, the lack of the internal lock. It's got a nice classic K-frame look to it. It's in stainless steel, but it's a Rossi. This particular model is a Rossi Model 89. And I have been not able to find out a whole lot about this firearm, unfortunately, in terms of looking at it. Trying to find out things such as what years this was made and things of that nature, and I can't find a lot of information about this. It was made in Brazil. I do know that at some point after this firearm was made, Taurus bought Rossi, and Inner Arms out of Alexandria, Virginia imported it. I've gone to Rossi's site and looked up that serial number, and it doesn't yield anything for me. So not real good record keeping. But one thing about this one in particular, it is in 32 Smith and Wesson long. So that's a little bit different caliber than you're going to normally see me shoot. It does have this sight system, which is basically this channel cut into the top of the frame. No color, no stripe, nothing. Like I said, this reminds me a lot of Smith and Wesson model 637 that I had in terms of that K-frame size and the sighting system and so forth. But this is a really nice looking gun, and at some point we're going to shoot it. Let's take a look at the lockup and some of that stuff. Okay, so as I mentioned, this does not have the internal lock, which a lot of people don't like about the new Smiths. It does have very much a Smith and Wesson style cylinder release. And I have taken this down and oiled it a little bit, things of that nature. And as you can see, everything about this says, let's take a Smith and Wesson and make our copy of it. In terms of the lockup, though, you can see that there's very little end shake at all. Locks up pretty tight. There's a couple cylinders such as this one that locks up tighter than the others. So this does hold 6 shots. Here's another tighter cylinder. It does hold 6 shots and seems to be in pretty good shape. It is a smallish kind of firearm. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that Walther PP that we reviewed recently. And in terms of size, 32 anything isn't my preferred kind of round for self-defense or anything like that. But hey, guys use that for years. Used to be what was in the old Colt Police Positive back at the turn of the century. So it can be effective, but there's just a lot more effective options these days. That said, this is a nice size. It's a little bit longer than what makes a good pocket gun, but you could certainly adapt it for that use. You're going to have guys that see the Rossi and immediately just flip out and say, hey, that's cheap crap, you don't want it. A lot of that's based on price. Rarely is it based on experience. I don't know. I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm just showing you the firearm. But I think it is a nice looking firearm. It does look good. It's double action pull. Very consistent. Single action. Nice and easy. So trigger wise, I see no perceived difference between this and a Smith and Wesson. There, I said it. So kind of taking a look under the hood here. This looks an awful lot like a Smith and Wesson K-frame, that's for sure. Obviously, that's what this was modeled after. Comes apart like one. You know, the hammer spring, whole 9 yards. Looks a little bit like some Colts I've had too. But you notice it doesn't have an internal lock, which is interesting. But I just sat down and took this apart using the same procedure that I did with any Smith and Wesson revolver I've ever taken down. I did give this a little bit of flits, but it is a little bit frustrating. I can't find a lot of information on this firearm, so that is a little bit frustrating. But it cleans up pretty good, as you can see. 32 Smith and Wesson long. Interesting caliber. The guy who had this gun said, hey, here's some ammo, and this is actually 32 ACP, which will work, just like 38 works in a 357. But I think at some point we'll get some Smith and Wesson 32 long and give this a test fire. The grips, nice wood. Very nice wood. I'm sure, this being from Brazil, that this is some kind of native Brazilian wood. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. And in terms of looking at this internally, you can see not evidence of flame cutting, but you can see where you do have some flame in that cylinder to barrel gap. Don't know how many rounds have been through this. So again, really hard to evaluate this. But from a finish standpoint and a fit standpoint, it's a pretty nice gun. So we talk about measuring that cylinder to barrel gap, which can be important. And you can see this is about as tight as I can fit it at 0.003. So this is 3/1000ths of an inch. It's a pretty tight gap. Now, I don't know how many rounds, like I said, have been fired through this. I don't think a lot. You know, let's shoot 1,000 rounds through this and then make a determination. But with the lack of perceivable end shake and what feels like a pretty tight lockup, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with this. A lot of guns, when I try speed firing them like that, at some point they want to lock up. The better ones won't, and this one does not. So you got to like that. The last thing we're doing is just taking a look down in the barrel. We don't see any evidence of pitting, corrosion. The rifling all seems intact. You can see maybe a little bit of a scratch or something in there. But I have to say that this firearm looks to be in pretty good shape. But overall, this is a cool little gun. We'll have to see how it shoots at some point and get back to you. But right now, just wanted to show you this quick. We cleaned it up today a little bit and gave it a nice polish with the flits. And it's not a bad-looking little gun. Like I said, it's kind of a K-frame wannabe. But what it doesn't want to be is a pin barrel, because it's already got that. What it doesn't want to be is a hammer-mounted firing pin, because it's already got that. And it's got a lack of that internal lock, the Hillary hole, as some people call it, on the Smith and Wessons. That's nice too. So if you didn't know that this wasn't a Smith and Wesson, and you're not an absolute expert on these, which I don't consider myself an absolute expert on any firearm, but if you didn't know those things, and it had a Smith and Wesson engraved on there and didn't have inner arms, and you might not know that this wasn't a nice K-frame Smith and Wesson, but it is what it is. So thought I'd show it to you today. It's got its merits. Who knows, maybe we'll hang on to this one. This is DR Drake 63 saying thanks for watching, guys.